The next one I want to review is one that I actually read right before The Spirituality of Imperfection. It's called A Question of Values by Hunter Lewis. I actually bought two books titled A Question of Values because I didn't know which one was which. So I'm going to read the other one at another time. But this one's pretty interesting. He's laying out different value systems that people construct their lives based off of or view the world through. And he's talking about, he's kind of just laying it out. He's not suggesting that one value system is better than another, or that you should adopt one value system over others, or that you should discard value systems, based on anything he's saying. That's not, and he's very, very clear about that at the end of the book. But he talks about the four value systems, which is the value system based on sense experience, which would be hippies. Modernistic would be hippies, right? But the Bohemian eras, the libertine era, right? Those times where it was very much driven by sense experience and enjoy or indulge in every single possible variant of what your senses can be exposed to. Like I said, the most recent form of that was the hippie movement. In its fundamentalism, the hippie movement was that. And there are some branch movements after that are a little more recent. Then he talked about the value systems based on logic and how people, a lot of philosophers have constructed value systems based on logic, and they eliminate a divine being, they eliminate a higher power. A lot of them are atheistic, anyway, and they get into everything's based on logic. And he goes through all of that. Then there's the value systems based on emotion, which that's pretty straightforward. If everything's based on emotion, then there's very little logic there. There's very little intuition there. There's very little sense experience. Not necessarily less sense experience, but it's emotion driven. Love, anger, fear, hatred, all the emotions you can think of. It doesn't follow a clear path. It's and it's fairly contradictory to itself. He talks about that for a chunk. And then the fourth value system, which is intuition. He talks about that, where they tend to be intuitive, and they tend to let their gut feeling drive their intuition or their value system, and what they feel is right, they go ahead and do. Which branches a little bit into the emotional side and a little bit into the sense experience side, and can branch into the logical side, but it's definitely not based in logic, cold calculating logic. It's based in intuition. And then he talks about two synthetic value systems. There's a value system based on authority, which is religion mostly, but is also authoritarian governments and stuff like that. Very interesting how he ties that together. Definitely a very, very strong tie there, where people are looking for an authority in their life, whether it's a religion, whether it's a group telling them to live a certain way, whether it's a government telling them to do a certain thing, whether it's a boss at a company telling them that they need to do this job or that job or whatever. And then he gets on to the second of the what he calls synthetic mental modes, or value systems, which is science. He talks about science being a synthetic mental mode and a synthetic value system. And he gets into that pretty deeply, and he does a really, really good job with that. And then he goes into all the smaller derivative modes that come from those first four, and then the two synthetic modes, and he ties it all together. It's a little bit thick to read. It's not terribly long. It's 200 and something pages long, but it is definitely heavier to read. But it's worth it, hashtag learning. Anyway, check it out. It's very interesting, very well written. And again, he does have personal biases that come through in the writing, which he acknowledges at the end. But he does his best to not ascribe or not tell you should ascribe to one set of values or one combination of values or whatever. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was more of a philosophical work. He referenced Michel Montaigne, who was the guy who invented the essay, which inspired me to look up and possibly buy one of or the volumes of essays by Michel Montaigne, and just to learn a little bit more about him, because I had never heard of him, but he's the founder of he's the guy who invented the type of writing we call essays. Anyway, that was really interesting. Great book, great read, and I will do a review on the other book, A Question of Values, when I end up reading it. So yeah, check them out. Both this book and the other book that I reference, The Spirituality of Imperfection, both of these were really, really good and definitely worth reading.